Good morning and welcome to the AusCycling National Esports Series, round number 2. I'm Anna Russell, a triathlete by nature, in case you didn't catch that. But next to me is Kierin Lewis from Zwift, knows a lot about Zwift racing and in real life cycle racing. And he is here next to me in the commentary booth for what will be a very exciting round number 2. Last week we had 2 races in round 1. We hit up the Bologna TT, 8 kilometers of pain and suffering, followed pretty quickly by the Crit City course, 16 laps of that, again, some flat and fast racing. But today we're heading to the Harrogate circuit. Kierin, I believe you're the mastermind behind the race courses of this series, so you might have a little bit to answer for with all the the suffering we might see out there with all the races on course. But welcome, Kierin, and let us know what you think about the racing coming up this morning.
Thanks, Anna. I certainly am glad I'm in the commentary booth for this one. I'm out on the race circuit. Harrogate is a terribly hard circuit, obviously from the 2019 Worlds. Very wet race that it was, but let's go through the course today. So as you can see, 41.6 kilometers, 737 meters of vertical gain. So lots and lots of climbing. The main KOM point coming after we go through a bit of a dipper and then up straight a wall. That'll be probably the big defining point of the race, although plenty of other lumps out on the course to shake things up.
So it's 3 laps. We've got 41.6 kilometers. We've got some power ups out there on course too. So the feather, draft, and aero. We'll talk a little bit more about those as we start seeing the racing for those new to this sort of format of esport racing. But basically, they offer a little bit of a bonus to people, especially that feather as they go up what would I call a brutal QOM in the women's race coming up, where that feather is going to play into the hands of those who've got it, and it's going to make some big differences. Now, last week we saw some really great performances in both the women's and the men's racing. Kierin, you know a little bit about the Aussie cycling scene. What were some performances you thought really stood out, and who should we be looking at for today's racing?
Yeah, of course. So crossing the women, obviously we saw Cassia Bolio absolutely dominate that time trial. It was an unbelievable effort. So I'd expect possibly a similar performance out here today, given it's quite a lumpy circuit. Knowing she comes from a bit of a tri background as well, probably very adept to lasting a bit longer of a circuit that it is. Mm-hmm. But across in a few of the other teams have got a bit of my personal favourite choice. I'm very biased for this one, but Carly Taylor from Zwift out there, our very own social media manager down here, racing for a rock salt attacker. I know that Peter Mullins as well, the main mastermind behind that team as well, is fielding the squad out there, obviously multiple times Australian champion. So watch her in a sprint for sure as well if things shake down that way. Crossing the New Zealand side of the world, we got Shamara Shepherd out there, Com Games rep, as well as a ZA finalist in the women's side there, riding for that Kenyan SRAM contract. Should be quite handy on the lumpier circuits, that's for sure. And I'd love to see what last week's criterium winner, Emily Watzkadu from, was it Love Me, Love You Nights Racing? So, from... I forgot her team's name, sorry.
It's a good segue though, Kierin. Looking at the teams racing, this is an elite teams competition, and we see that the team you just mentioned, Love Me, Love You Nights Racing, great name by the way, is leading the competition. So, I mean, they've got a huge points advantage, looks like 615 points over the next place team, Pro Cycling Sunshine Coast, which is sitting back on 334. So what are your thoughts? I mean, how important is the team game going to play out in today's race? Is it going to be some team tactics? Will we see, people sending satellite attacks up the road? Or do you think people will really just stay in the safety of the pack?
Yeah, I think definitely this is a team circuit for sure. I think if you have the numbers, you have the firepower, you're able to control the pace on the front. Being that lumpier kind of circuit, people will probably be a bit more hesitant to take the pace. So you'd expect, Love Me, Love You Nights Racing with the numbers and power that they have. Obviously, they've even got Susie Wood down there as well, running a top 10 just individually. So they've got a lot of firepower in that team. I could expect to see them definitely at least be the ones expected to take up the front. But yeah, we'll see how we go.
We are very close to the race kicking off. Very exciting. Like we said, 3 laps of the Harrogate circuit. I know back in 2019, third place was the Australian Amanda Spratt. So I'm sure that that's going to offer some inspiration to these wonderful female riders who have headed out on course. I can see Justine Barrow just leading out. I mean, if we've got some of the audience who's new to the Zwift format of racing, these starts are incredibly fast, furious really, and you just need to hold on for that first couple of minutes to settle into the pace. But these guys, you can just see those watts on the right hand side of the screen. They are going out very quickly. Just a note as well, we are up on the socials, so if you've got any questions about the racing or want to put in any comments, let us know and we can cover it off as we follow the racing today. It will be a bit of a long one, just over 40k on this tricky course, looking at about an hour.
Yeah, definitely an aggressive start out here today. We do head up the Big Falls Flat that kicks things off for about 3 kilometres at about 2 to 3% up Oatley Road. It's the longest section of flat, we call it, for Yorkshire, obviously a very lumpy area of the world. So I'd expect to see a few of the stronger teams, definitely if they're wanting to set the tone early, pushing to the front right now.
Yeah, this first part of the course is really tricky. I can see Laura Luxford moving to the front. This is sort of, it's not even a false flat, it is a 3 to 4% grade. Such a drag off the start. And if a team wants to start pushing pace, you can already see feather power-ups being dropped. They gathered those right at the beginning. So that would indicate to me a couple of riders are struggling, because you'd really want to save those for the Queen of the Mountain that's further on to go of this lap. But good start here from Evans, and Gunning's pulling in just behind. Wood there as well, very good. But these are some serious watts. These guys are pushing off the front, and we might start to see riders just trailing a little bit off the back. I can see Laura Luxford on screen. She's I actually used to race with her sister, Annabelle Luxford, who's a world-class triathlete. Laura did dabble in triathlon a little bit, and actually has a background in elite gymnastics as well. So it seems like any sport she touches turns to gold, and she's turned her eyes to cycling.
Yeah, definitely some impressive watch she's pushing out here for specialised women's racing. They've fielded quite a strong team, and they have Matilda Reynolds in their mix as well. Very, very adept sprinter down here in Australia. So let's see what their game plan is here, with Laura maybe potentially just covering moves early on if there's any cracks that form up this little stretch here.
Yeah, I just saw the name pop up too of Katie Banerjee. Now, she had an absolute stellar start to the series in round one, a bronze in the time trial, and then a silver in the scratch race, which I say impressive because those were two extremely different formats of racing, an 8K time trial and then a long crit style scratch race. I mean, it seems like she's the whole package. So I'd be watching her on this kind of a course, because this is where you need a bit of a sprint for the finish, but you also need to be very good at pushing out that 2-minute power to get up over those climbs.
Yeah, 100%. And you can see her other teammates there as well, pushing to the front in that the fluoro pink kit there. Obviously, Love Me, Love You Knights Racing, racing in that fluoro pink kit altogether. So that's how you'll easily be able to spot them in the kit. But 4 of them there at the front quite early on as well. They're obviously going to play that numbers game, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a team's competition, and I am seeing a few of the Silver Ferns there as well. So it's a New Zealand elite e-cycling team who have come out. I haven't quite seen Samara Shepherd's name popping up yet. If I know her, she's a sort of crafty wee racer, and she'll be sitting in the pack somewhere saving a lot of energy. She comes from an ultra distance sort of mountain running background. So again, this course I think really does suit those that have come from perhaps even a running or a triathlon background, just because it's the race of attrition. Like we've said, sort of lap 1, maybe not too hard. Lap 2, it gets really hard. And then lap 3 is just hold on with everything you've got. So it's going to be brutal. It's an hour of really hard racing with just constant ups and downs. They have crested that initial hill, and now they're going to have a little bit of respite heading into sort of a little downhill drag. They can get into the super tuck, but then it just starts rolling again.
Yeah, we can see that down the bottom there, the little ride-on thumbs up button there, the 6 ride-ons there for Samara Shepherd she's collected. So what you can do out there is pair onto the Zwift companion app, find any of these riders right now. They'll appear as Zwifting right now, and you're able to give them a ride-on, a bit of encouragement basically to say, doing a good job, maybe it's that extra burst of encouragement you need. I know for me, definitely, if I was in here right now, this hill right here is an absolute leg buster. So a little bit of encouragement, always welcome, that's for sure. You can also see the little thumbs just flying down on screen as well. So definitely helping the riders out there with at least just the moral power up, we call it.
Yeah, I like that moral. You definitely need a bit of a moral kick on this course, that's for sure, because what's going to happen is they will they'll go through a little bit of a climb now, but then they have what I'd call a sort of prelude climb before the big timed QOM that they have, which is still pretty tricky. If anyone is going to play the team game and maybe try and get away, I think a good strategy could be to push some riders on that climb, get them a little bit of a gap before they hit the really tough one, because after that tough one there's a really big downhill, and if you've got a gap you could actually stay away, particularly if you could drop a little bit of a power up in the group, maybe a draft, save some energy on the down. But this is I mean, I know Kierin, you've picked the courses for this series, this is one of my favorites. It's an honest racing course. You really have to, one, be good at team tactics, and two, just be able to put on some serious watts for a long period of time.
100%. I mean, when I was selecting the courses, I mean, there is a actual Queen stage in this race, but this one came to mind straight off the bat for me of it'll create some gaps very early on, that's for sure. Like you said, it's an honest race course. There's some tactics that can be played, and a crafty rider can get away, but they will need the power to back that up. They'll need the fitness, they'll need the power. There's no hiding the wheels the whole way around and win the sprint on this kind of course, that's for sure.
So Kierin, I mean, I know a lot of the audience here might actually be kind of new to the esport sort of format and maybe a bit more familiar with in real life cycling, but you know, you straddle both. You've done the professional cycling in real life. You work for Zwift, but you're also, you know, prolifically on Zwift. What do you see as the crossovers, if there are any, or are you just seeing this as a completely new sport now?
I think it's quite an interesting conversation to be had at the moment. Obviously, we've just had the World Championship last year, crowning two very real world champions. Obviously, they received the jersey and everything. And the women's winner was a professional cyclist, obviously, as well. So on the women's side, at least, and then on the men's side, it was a rower. So you can see how there is overlaps, I believe, but there's also very much so a unique, almost athlete that can win this. Obviously, in the men's, well, a name that springs immediately to mind, unfortunately, he won't be here in the men's, but is Ollie Jones, who absolutely is dominant. I mean, myself, obviously, I like to race on the platform quite a lot. I get quite fearful when Ollie turns up on the start line. I know I'm probably racing for second place today. And he's completely changed the dynamic of Zwift racing in some aspects, him and his team, that's for sure. But I think obviously with things like Zwift Academy coming together, which ultimately culminates in giving anyone from any walk of life a chance of racing in the professional peloton. As we see Justine Barrow coming on screen there from Rock Salt Attacker. Being able to go into the World Tour peloton, as we've seen two Aussies coming out there with Neve Bradbury and Jay Vine from this series last year, actually shows that you can combine Zwift racing elements with the real world. Jay Vine in particular was a prolific Zwift racer as well, and now suddenly he's amazing. As we can see, the drafting dynamics there on screen, quite a new thing for the broadcast. So you can see where you're sitting in the wheel and how much draft you're getting. Obviously, further back in the pack you are, the more draft you're going to get.
That is phenomenal. This is the first time I've seen this, so this looks amazing, being able to see that. I was just thinking it was, you know, it's Pride Month. I thought maybe we were just shooting a rainbow out from the back of the rider, but this looks really good. So these guys are just about to hit what I'm calling that sort of prelude climb. So a bit of a drag up, 3-4% it kicks up to, so not super steep, but it does put a sting in the legs. We are seeing some riders getting strung out a little bit now and dropped off the back, but they'll crest this, and then it's a very it's a hard right-hander straight down, and then basically a straight into a left hand, and you hit a bit of a wall. So this is where I think lap one could be make or break for a lot of riders to make sure they get into that front group, because if you miss it after that upcoming climb, unfortunately, the way this course goes, it is very, very tricky to get back on. So they're hitting this right-hander at the top, like I said, straight down, then a little left-hander, and then we're hitting a wall. So very interesting there, seeing the drafting dynamics though. That's a really cool addition I'm seeing to the gameplay. That's fantastic. Just see who potentially is just playing this tactically a bit better than others.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of Justine Barrow, that's on screen there at the moment, she will definitely be one that I'd expect to be pushing the pace quite early. She's one of the better endurance athletes in Australia, that's for sure. Always a big difference maker at the Australian Championships in January down here. A noted climber as well, which should definitely suit this upcoming KOM for us. But across her team as well, we've also got Carly Taylor yet to make an appearance near the front. Very, very cagey level 50 Zwifter as well. So I'd expect to see her pushing some form of a pace up there. Another noted climber, probably one of Australia's best ever, I'd probably say, from the women's side. So yeah, I'm very keen to see it, as the fireworks probably will kick off on the first lap, I can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do want to touch on Katie Banerjee as well, who has won last year the New South Wales Hill Climb Championship. So she obviously knows how to climb. She actually is a hospital emergency doctor, and on that race, saved a fellow cyclist who had passed out at the top of the climb. So not only is Katie Banerjee fantastic at hill climbing, she can save lives at the top of the climb as well. So don't think she'll be stopping to do that here for any of these avatars. They'll just keep on rolling, but very, very impressive from her, those Palmares.
We can see those lightweight feather ups getting dropped as well now, and there's already a group pushing at the front there. The watts per kilo is climbing very high. Laura Luxford, Justine Barrow, and Shamara Shepherd, those names we were speaking about earlier, just kicking off on the first lap as we go. 7.1 watts per kilo from Justine already. That's very impressive. Let's see what happens here as riders scramble to get across on the wheel.
Oh, it's amazing. Like I said, Samara Shepherd used to be an elite mountain runner, New Zealander, a little bit of a soft spot for her, but she is, like we've said, a finalist in the Zwift Academy. She's no joke when it comes to esports. So she's got a good little group there, herself, Justine Barrow and Laura Luxford. They know how to ride, and I think they will make a selection here. What I'm noticing already, Kierin, not many team tactics at play. This seems like it's just all in, all for one, and make it over the climb as best you can as we're heading to what I'd call the recovery spot, little flat area through this roundabout. You can just get your breath back. Not the best place to drop a feather there from Laura Luxford. It would have been better on this next little kick to the line, but hopefully she won't make that mistake in the next laps.
Yeah, you're spot on there. That little false flat almost, or layoff there, is nearly a head crack almost as we get into the next ramp. And this is where the difference is really made. If you can really put the pressure down here, this is where those gaps are really formed. We can see that we do have two of the Love Me, Love You Knights Racing trying to come across on the gap there, working together. So maybe a little bit of team tactics at play from Katie and Emily Watts there. They're pushing very hard. Hopefully they can get together across the top and chase this group down, as people maybe will start to look at each other and start to assess the situation. As we get Cassia on screen here, look at her pushing at 356 watts there. Wow, this is a big ride.
Yeah, Cassia used to actually be a elite triathlete, switched her focus to cycling a few years ago, and now lives over on the Sunshine Coast. Got to say, from that live stream we're seeing, does not look super sunny in the Sunshine Coast today, but it's probably not not great for her, but good to be on an indoor bike. But yeah, good setup there as well with the fan going. Obviously got the towel set up. Just one drink bottle I'm seeing on the bike. So gosh, I hope she's getting some calories on, because this is going to be pretty brutal in the coming laps. But looks like Cassia, like she did last week with the gold first place in the time trial, fifth in the scratch race, so a bit of an all-rounder. Looking at her power profile, I'd say strength is really in that 5-minute power. So that's why we're seeing her do so well on that climb. It just fits right into that kind of threshold area. And she's got a really nice little group around her. I don't see anyone catching up to this group at all.
We see the riders, they're using the super tuck ability as well. So for those new to Zwift, once you go over 56 kilometers per hour and the grading is greater than -5%, you can free wheel drop your watts to zero, and you'll enter what we call the super tuck. So that'll increase your speed down the hill dramatically, especially once you're in the wheel there. You can see massive gap forming here already, 10 seconds. So it's going to take quite a bit of an effort from behind, with most of the main teams represented up here in Love Me, Love You, Knights Racing, ARA, Sunshine Racing, and Rock Salt as well. I could imagine that this might nearly be the move.
I think this is it. You can just see from that angle there, the chase group is just a little bit behind. Now, I wouldn't say this group here is totally away in the clear yet, because it's such a long race. If there's any easing off on the pedals, that group behind will catch up, especially if it's a bit of a bigger group. And it looks as though sort of about 10 seconds back, you do have a group of sort of, I'd say about 15 riders. So if they consolidate and come together, they could catch this group at the front. I have seen this happening a lot on this course, because you've really burnt a lot of matches on that climb. you kind of recover and then you really ease off the gas a little bit. And that chase group behind gathers in numbers and is able to catch up. So, yeah, they just need to watch it a little bit. Looks like Knights Racing with Katie Banerjee and Emily Watts has done the best over that climb with 2 races represented in this front crew. We've just got the one Kiwi with Samara Shepherd, who we've touched on, and then some of the Sunshine Coast races. So, yeah, Knights Racing, very, very good result here. 2 people making this front pack. That's if they can stay away, that's a great result for them.
Yeah, 100%. And it gives them that cards to play later on as well. As you mentioned, second and third lap is where we really see some tactics getting played up that KOM with either Katie being able to go up the road or maybe even potentially looking at one of the other riders going up the road and slipping in one of the 2 with them as well. We see here, this is a bit of a lull as we go through Millionaires Row, as we call it out in Yorkshire. I'm sure that riders will probably have to start looking at each other at this point. As you mentioned, there's that group of 15 behind. It is a huge pack dynamic to work together. I am noticing, though, it's made up of quite a lot of rock salt and quite a lot of Love Me, Love You Knights Racing riders, though. But yeah, we can see back there's quite a few good noted sprinters in there, with Peter Mullins not being too far back as well. So I'm sure that these 6 ahead definitely don't want to see that group coming back, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they do look a little bit more motivated now. It's pushed out to more around that 10 to 13 second mark. I always kind of think the golden number is 15 seconds. Once they get beyond that, it's almost impossible for that chase group to get back on. So I think now we're looking at the group that we will take to the line. I mean, back in 2019, when this was a world champs, you saw Annemiek van Vleuten do a 100K solo effort off the front to then take the win. I mean, do we see any of these riders be motivated or able to sort of try and do a solo attack on lap 2 and hold it out for lap 3?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some noted time trialers in this group. Obviously, Laura Luxford with that try background, you could expect her being able to pull off an effort not too dissimilar to that. I know as well, Justine Barrow as well. Obviously, the Australian Championships tends to come down to a war of attrition, so you could expect her to be able to pull off something of a solo move as well. She doesn't have the biggest sprint noted on her either, so I'd expect her to want to go solo to the line, although we'll get to the sprint finish in just a moment and you'll be able to see for yourself, but it's a very interesting sprint. It's quite difficult. You go over this little ramp here, through a little descent, a left and a right, and then suddenly you're faced with another little kicker up to the line. So it's not the most straightforward sprint in the world, you could say. If you recall the men's in 2019, that was a very interesting sprint finale, that's for sure, with Mads Pedersen getting up for the win. And yeah, it's definitely not the most straightforward sprint in the world, although I would say Shamara Shepherd probably has all the cards to play here in my books. I think with her mountain biking background, I think that this is the kind of course that could definitely suit her.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And yeah, you've got a good point, Kierin. The sprint finish is quite interesting. I've actually seen in a lot of Zwift races on this course, we just saw them go under a bit before the kilometre to go banner. That will be for lap number 3. But I've seen people solo attack at that point and manage to stay away, because where they're hitting now with this right-hander into what shoots up to over 10% up this climb, really brutal way to finish the race. And a lot of people start their sprint too early and they start it here. Their power up runs out about 300 meters to the line, and then they get passed by those who have been able to sit in the draft. So it's quite a tricky one, but yeah, I tend to agree. Samara Shepherd, who knows Zwift racing extremely well, has probably ridden this course about 1,000 times, will just sort of know how to win this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we can see those three riders behind here now, with a Love Me, Love You Knights Racing rider, a Rock Salt rider, and the VAU rider there as well, Paula Schultz. She'll probably be the one expected to do most of the work, I could imagine, being the other 2 riders up right ahead. As you can see, she is pushing on. But as you can see ahead, though, Cassia pushing out 330 watts. I don't know that Paul is putting in quite a lot. I mean, this is that commitment point in the race. You either put it all on the line, make it to the front, and trying your best to conserve and make it stick, or you need to put the clutch in and head back to the main chase group there.
Yeah, I think unfortunately you're right there. She's just not putting in the same amount of power. Looking at the stats though, she does have one of the best 20-minute power watts per kg, a little bit less than Katie Banerjee, but yeah, Paula 4.5 watts a kg for 20 minutes. That's pretty good, and it looks like she's trying to solo TT her way up, but the speed just isn't quite there for her to be able to do that. She's stuck in no woman's land, 14 seconds back. So unfortunately, it would probably be better to just relax a little, wait for the chase behind her to catch up, and then settle into the pack and just get as many points for her team as possible. I just think it's a step too far to make it to that front pack now for her.
Yeah, I agree. 14 seconds, as you mentioned earlier, and the kind of magic number being 15 seconds. This is a mammoth task. Props to her for giving it a crack, though. You never want to just sit on your laurels and make up the numbers in this kind of racing. With points being paid down to the top 20 today. So, I mean, it's still worth it. You definitely are still racing overall for your team, for your own self, for your individual points. So it's still definitely worth putting in the effort. But at this point, you'd be starting to think, all right, time to get back in that pack, time to conserve.
Yeah, for sure. I've just seen someone put a comment on the YouTube feed, Boglio Ghana. So I'm not sure if they're referring to, my Italian's not great. I don't know how yours is, Kira. I don't know if they're referring to Cassia Boglio as a similar rider to Ghana. That would be pretty amazing. He had a stellar ride for Ineos in the latest Giro, but maybe another rider to watch. So yeah, like we said, used to be an elite triathlete, so probably has a good ability to stick with some strong power for some long periods of time. And what we are seeing on this front pack is, we've got Emily Watts as well, great cyclist. She was gold first place in the scratch race in round number 1 and has a pretty even power profile. So I'd say, she's pretty good at the 5-minute power, she's pretty good at the 20-minute power, and that's a dangerous all-rounder to have in this group because that's exactly what this course looks like. But I think, in my mind, coming into that next QOM, you're going to see the likes of Katie, the likes of Samara, maybe Laura even, pushing pace and just trying to get the group even smaller, because I'm not sure they'll have the sprint at the end to beat some of these more pure cyclists.
Yeah, that's definitely true there. And I think actually it's quite interesting to touch on Cassia. We haven't really mentioned, but only at the top of the show, but her time trial last week was extremely impressive. I'm sure to those that know her, it wasn't at all a surprise. But for myself, in the Zwift world at least, it was an incredibly impressive ride. So I'd definitely be watching her. She's probably one day for sure could go solo over the last lap. I mean, a 14-minute effort in that time trial definitely says that she can go it alone. But yeah, there are quite a few riders in here that I would say the same for. I'd probably say realistically, out of everybody in here, the only one that I would realistically back in the sprint is either her teammate from Love Me Love You Nights Racing, Emily Watts, or potentially Samara Shepherd at this point.
Yeah, I've just seen that Ghana actually translates from Italian into win. So there's a few supporters out there for Boglio for the win. So that's great to see. Keep the Italian coming. I'll try and get my little phrase book out and understand what's going on. But Cassia Boglio, supporters out there for her taking the win. Very good racing in round 1. But yeah, this is a select group that's going to get a little bit cagey. They seem to have relaxed the pace a bit. Obviously, they're far enough ahead now. They're not too worried about those chasing. Looks like they've got sort of over 15 seconds, which is that magic number I was talking about. And they can afford to relax a little bit. And this is when Zwift racing gets quite exciting. It's when it's not just purely about watts you're pushing out, but almost how many watts you're saving and where you decide to attack. And that's what I like about a smaller group that we see in these women's races usually, is it starts to get a bit cagey, it gets a little bit exciting, and it's the ones who perhaps know the game the best that will have the advantage.
Yeah, it's interesting to note there who's being very crafty in using that super tuck right now with Justine Barrow using it. I noticed Katie was using it earlier as well. So as you mentioned, it's a game of conservation right now. What can I say for that very last lap, that all decisive final lap around here? I am noticing though that the group behind chasing is swelling a little bit as they swallow up the couple riders that were floating off the front. So As you noted earlier, it's about a group of 15, roughly, quite a big group. So I'm sure that these riders are noticing that in game. So definitely need to keep the pressure on still as we go through these rollers, just because this is a course where you could quite easily come from behind. I've seen it before, and the one thing that comes to mind was the Ineos race that was held last year with Rohan Dennis, I think, being about 30 seconds behind going into the final lap, and he won by 1 minute. So it's not all said and done, that's for sure. However, a group like this, you would expect to work together quite well.
Yeah, I have seen that lead of this group drop from about 16 seconds now down to 13. So there's some motivation behind being led by Schultz there, who we had eyes on earlier, who just dropped back to that group, which could be fantastic for them. Now down to 12 seconds. I don't think this race is over. I think that Schultz saved a bit of energy, dropped back, and is now driving some of this chase that's happening. I see Madigan as well, Wright, Sherwell, all pushing to the front. 11 seconds. I think this front group needs to start getting a little bit worried. That is well within striking distance for this group. And anyone who's sitting in that chase, I think your mate Carly Taylor from Zwift as well is sitting in there. And I can see she might even be sitting right at the back, just conserving a bit of energy and letting other people pull her up to this group. 9 seconds behind now. I think they could end up coming together before they hit this QOM.
Yeah, this is what I was mentioning before. It's that kind of indecisive moment you either need to fully commit and keep the pressure on all the way through the lap, or people from behind, obviously they're going to have that carrot in front of them and really push on and try and catch the front. It's definitely one of those courses where it almost is better to chase in some aspects, because it's very up and down all the time. There's always room to be making up time as you're going through the lap. Plenty of little false flats as we're going through just here, which then turn into an actual climb as well. So many areas where if you're not on the pedals, you're going to be getting caught. As we see Carly Taylor coming on screen there, I think she's leading the ride-on cup there with 28 ride-ons there. But looks quite cool. Very seasoned Zwifter out there. I'm sure she's got no fan on at the moment. Very well known for running no fan there in Adelaide.
Oh.
Probably a bit too cold for her, actually, I'd imagine right now.
Oh, that's brutal. I can't imagine not riding with a fan. That's next level hard. I feel like she's making it harder on herself than she needs to. But I've got to say, looking at that image, she looks focused. That looks like she knows what's kind of going on. Obviously, she'll know this game extremely well. They're 8 seconds back now from this lead group. And this chase group is full of It's swelled to a lot of riders. This is why we're seeing these time gaps come down. Like, unfortunately, I would have to say, if they don't get on before they get to that QOM, they're just going to lose more time, because that front group, obviously, with the breakaway on the first lap, is very good at climbing. So these guys, they know it's make or break time now. They need to get on, get in that super tuck down this, but use the power of the group draft, and hopefully 7 seconds back, they might make it.
100%. You saw Carly using that super tuck to perfection, really, right there. I think she's mastered that one. But we go ahead here and we can see the group. There's definitely a lot of hesitation here. This one's definitely coming back together. I'll call it right now. There's no one that has that sense of urgency to drive it forward as we cut across to Laura Luxford there. She looks to be trying to conserve, although heart rate's sitting at 175, so I'm sure she's getting a little bit. I mean, it's never an easy moment on this course, so it's a bit hard to conserve where you can, but I'm sure she's starting to focus now on this KOM as we go over the last little roller into that big wall that's in front of the riders. Justine Barrett now trying to push the pace as the catch is actually made there.
Wow, that was quick. They obviously, this is what happens in Zwift. That group, if it's bigger, when they go down those big downhills where I think it was going to about -8% there, their speed is so much higher than a group of 4 or 5. So this has seen them all come together. I would be pretty gutted, especially that Knights Racing team. Love me, love not Knights Racing, because they had 2 riders up the front. They were really sitting pretty, and now they've just been caught up by a whole bunch of different teams. So not ideal for them, and you just wonder what the strategy will be now, because they pushed hard on that climb, they got away, and they were caught. You don't want to do that again. You want to be saving that energy for lap 3 and attack on that climb, because then it's very close to the finish line. So unfortunate they've been caught. I think there'll be a bit of sort of demoralization in a few of those lead riders now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, especially for the Love Me, Love You Nights racing, when you're in that power position and you think you might have the race not exactly sewn up, but you're definitely in the leader seat, it is always hard to reload again and try and make that same difference once again. But I'm sure they're well versed in this happening, so I'm sure they're not going to take that to heart and they're going to give it their all up the next KOM as we go into the descent now into the causeway, and we'll head back up that KOM for the second time.
Yeah, and like we said, it takes that hard left, goes up to basically a wall, and then there's that flat little portion. How I would be approaching this is sitting on wheels, just using the pace around you on that first half of the climb, recover on the roundabout, and then really push hard on that second part, because that's where people manage to get away. And if you can just carry that momentum through the banner, use it on that downhill, get into a bit of a super tuck, that's where you might be able to save a little bit of energy. But we know from lap one that a few of these climbers were dropped on this climb coming up. So whether they can kind of stick on with lap two, maybe they're a bit warmer, they needed a bit of a warm up to get them going. So I still think we're going to see over the top a select few of maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I think it's going to be sort of more or less the same story again, with just teams putting different riders ahead as they got the numbers game. Obviously, we're looking here at Paula Schultz from VAU, Velo Fit Australia Racing. So she was one that was obviously making the difference in that earlier chase. Let's see if it's cost her too much or if she's going to be very motivated to make the front so she doesn't have to repeat the same lap once more. But I'd expect definitely rock solid attacker to go on the charge once more. Justine Barrow already pushing the pace. She's very motivated out here today, already sitting on 7 watts per kilogram. Cassio on her wheel as well. Laura Luxford just there. Carly Taylor pushing the pace as well, sitting in there at 4th wheel. That's a very nice effort from her. Doesn't seem to be cracking just yet, though. It's a lot more together this time up the hill.
I think maybe those who aren't as used to this course perhaps didn't realize there was a little bit of a flat portion and they could have some time to recover up this climb, because I'm seeing there Madigan, Sherwell, Taylor, like you said, Schultz, all of the ones who were dropped on lap one are managing to stick on some wheels. So they're making the splits here. It could be, I think, a bigger group going into this final lap, which will make it quite exciting, because I think the next time they come up this climb, looks like Justine Barrow is our climbing woman of the day. She'll be getting a lot of confidence from this heading into the last lap, and I think this would be where you'd see her launch an attack for sure.
Yeah, and you touched on a really good point there. The confidence factor when you go through these climbs early on and you get that sense of, I am the strongest out here today, that really buoys you for the final lap, that's for sure. And we get Justine on screen now as she's pushing it once more up this final ramp here. Definitely going toe-to-toe with Cassia, though. She's holding her own, that's for sure. Definitely one to watch for here. I don't think this is all said and done. I think these two are probably quite close in ability right now, as they seem to be the two strongest, though, out of all the climbers. Although I don't know that two across the top will be the best bet, as everybody will start to come together behind. We might see the same formula once more.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how much they've dropped the other riders. I wonder if just the fact that that group behind caught up after the last time, the motivation isn't there to really go so hard that you're digging yourself into a big hole. But Justine there, looking at the picture on picture, she's up out of the saddle, cranking down some big watts, really low cadence as well. I think on Zwift, perhaps sometimes it's better to stay seated to generate the most power going up those sort of climbs, but she obviously managed to get it done there and in a great position now, sitting on the wheel of Cassia Boglio. And will these two get away? I don't think so. With Laura Luxford, we can see just about 8 seconds back, but they're in a bigger group. That'll probably come together to be about 10 riders. I think they'll end up catching up these two, and this might sort of bite them in the last lap, because that was a lot of energy they just spent.
Yeah, you're exactly right there. And I mean, this is a great position for Justine to be in, though, given that she has riders behind, obviously not in this immediate chase group, but there's not too long of a distance behind this chase group here, where she's got quite a few rock salt riders in there. ARA do not have anybody. So I think Justine's in a very good position if Cassio decides to push on with this. However, this group here definitely going to be motivated. Shamara definitely would love to get up if she can. With two Love Me, Love You Nights racing riders in here as well, we'll see them hopefully working together to try and peg this group back.
Yeah, it's probably a good time too to touch on some of the bike selection that we're seeing from the teams here. There's a few riders, I'm just seeing there with Samara Shepherd, going with a slightly deeper dish wheel. So obviously in game you can pick what bikes you'd like to ride, and this kind of course suits that all-rounder type bike just with the downs and ups. And I think Samara's picked a good choice there, just with a slightly deeper dish wheel, which will hurt on the uphill, but at times like this when you're in a group on the more flat terrain, it will be very, very handy. We're just seeing there the power numbers from Laura Luxford in this chase group versus Justine Barrow, who's in the lead 2 off the front. And I think they've got them in their sights there. I'd be surprised if this chase group wasn't able to get back on, just with the likes of Laura powering it off the front. Very high heart rate though. Look at that, 183 from Laura versus 165 from Justine. So there's a lot of effort going in from Laura to get on that front again, and I think that could hurt her next time up the climb, just holding that very high heart rate for so long.
Yeah, and the gap's coming down over time there. So 6 seconds to the front with looking at this group of 6 here. This is group of 5, sorry. I'd say this is going to come back together by the looks of it. But at what cost, as you mentioned? I think Justine's been able to conserve quite a lot there. Obviously very well noted for pushing a low gear, which might actually suit Zwift racing, who knows? Having a lower heart rate definitely helps, and obviously the lower the RPM means probably lower the heart rate, you don't have to spin the legs as much. So we'll see how this shakes out. Justine dropping an arrow, interestingly here, obviously wants a feather maybe for the final lap, maybe a bit of tactics getting played as the gap's coming down still to 4 seconds.
Yeah, for sure. That was a definite power-up ditch she had there. So she'll be, let's hope she's got the feather, because she might have ditched that and picked up the truck, which would not offer a lot of benefit coming into lap 3. So you've rolled the dice a little bit there, because the arrow is a good one for the finish of this race. But yeah, I guess you've got to roll the dice, right? You really need that feather if you're going to be able to put in any attack. That could be a little bit of an indication on what Justine's wanting to do in lap 3. If she really wants that feather, and we saw her on that climb, how strong she was, you add in the power up there, I mean, that's a perfect attacking opportunity.
Yeah, as the group comes together here, it is predominantly made up of the same riders that are off the front last lap, with the addition now of Paula Schultz, which is quite interesting. She's, decided, oh boy, I don't want to go through that pain of the last lap, and pushed the group across and made her way to the front instead here. Very, very, very good riding indeed. She'll be definitely one to watch for. I don't know too much about her just yet, but I'm sure she's going to show us in this final lap. But you're spot on there about Justine. And I think she's just given away her tactics to the rest of the riders, although I don't think anyone's going to be too surprised that Justine was planning on an attack up the final climb.
For sure. When you've got a New South Wales mountain riding champion in your group, I mean, you're going to know that they're wanting to push it on the final climb. Paula Schultz, just looking at her stats, she's only done 13 races in Zwift, so that could be why she got dropped on that first lap. Just a little bit of inexperience. I mean, you'd be looking at Samara and Justine having done over 100 races. So she new-ish to the Zwift game. Very good 5-minute power. So she obviously saw that. And I think this is what people find when they come into esport racing, is that you just have to ride well at crucial parts of the course, like the QOM, and then you can stay in the safety of the pack. But I think a lot of people just get so freaked out almost when they start the race and it starts so fast that they just think, I can't carry this on for the whole race. But you don't need to. You hold it for 1 to 2 minutes and you'll be able to make this front pack, and then the rest of the race is, relatively easy as you just sit on some wheels and conserve energy in the draft. So they're coming now into the end of lap number 2. So this is where they will take this hard right-hander. Keep an eye on what this looks like going into the finish. Like we said, it hard right, very steep climb, and then sort of a false flat to the finish. sprinters will want to start their sprint after the climb. People who are good at that time trial effort, like we definitely have in this course, will want to go out probably from the 1 kilometre, 800 metres to go mark, pull a bit of a Geraint Thomas early attack, try and get away from the sprinters. But yeah, looking at this now, finishing off lap 2, I think these guys do need to just conserve a little energy. That chase group is well back now. I mean, they're 28 seconds back. I said this lap 1, I know, that they weren't going to come back, but I actually think that's big enough now that they probably won't come back. And they don't have that rider like Paula Schultz really pushing pace. So I think there's some tired legs out there, and this group will stay away.
Yeah, I'd back you on that call, that's for sure. And I think this is it. We're looking at our selection now. VeloFit Racing I'd say the not VeloFit Racing, Knights Racing in the driving seat there, though, with the 2 riders up in front. It would be interesting to see what they play here. Obviously, Katie did have an excellent crit and time trial. She could be the most all-rounded rider in this field right now. So we haven't really spoke about her too much just yet in terms of what it might look like for the final here. I'd expect her to be the main rider following the wheels, that's for sure. Justine, obviously, I probably presume she's going to attack quite early. But I'd expect to see Katie immediately following, that's for sure. However, though, I would say that Samara has not shown her cards whatsoever. I think she's been very cagey today. So very curious to see what she decides to push out as we get Cassia back on screen here. Looks very cool and collected still, only sitting at 162 BPM. She's going to be one to watch for, that's for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say with Samara is when we saw her on that climb in the last lap, she really did drop off the pace a bit into almost a danger territory that she could have got caught out and been in the chase pack that we see now up to 30 seconds back. So that was risky. I don't know if that was a strategy. I think she might be a bit tired. I am looking at Boglio and Barrow for the ones to watch on this climb coming up, because they did play their cards, but they also just were well above the other riders with them, and they managed to get quite a good gap. If they can carry that through to the finish line, I mean, now that's another story.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Boglio looks quite good here. I'd be willing to probably back her. I don't know if she gave it everything on that climb with Justine just yet. Obviously, that time trial was a very good indication of how well she's climbing right now. So maybe we might see a crowning of a new hill climb champion today.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm just wondering, Emily Watts is in this front group too. I would say she is slightly dangerous as well. One reason I think that is she's actually had a crash the last couple of years that left her with 6 shattered vertebrae. Has come back through from that crash, now racing at a high level. I always think racers who have had that kind of an injury that is very significant have a huge mental advantage over the people around them. So keep an eye too on Emily Watts, because that mental advantage when everyone's tired and you've just got to push to the finish could really play into her hands as well.
No, that is a very good call. It definitely helps to be able to suffer on Zwift. That's the name of the game, that's for sure. But if we look at the team makeup composition in here, with 1 VeloFit rider, 1 Rock Salt rider, 2 Knights Racing riders, 1 Vantage New Zealand rider, 1 ARA Sunshine Racing rider, and 1 Specialized Women's Racing rider, it's definitely open field here as we get a look again at Paula Schultz. Her heart rate's coming down slightly now. It'd be interesting to see, though, who decides to play their cards. Maybe we might even see an early attack going into the climb, as you mentioned. It's that little last kicker. If you play your cards right, you could get yourself away enough to make the difference on the final climb.
Yeah, and just looking at some of the stats of the sprint on these ladies in this front group, looking at Emily Watts here, I mean, she is well up on all of the riders around her for her 15-second power numbers, 661 watts. The next best, looking at this group, would be Cassia Boglio with 498 watts. So, yeah, that's Emily Watts. If she can just stay up on this climb, will be sitting pretty coming into the finish, because I think by far she'll have that better 15-second power. But the other riders, I mean, This is a national series where they'll be racing each other. They'll know each other's power profiles, and they'll know they want to drop Emily on that next climb because they do not want to take her to the finish line for sure.
Yes, Emily Watts sure has a lot of watts. That's a given. But yeah, make a good point. They do race each other very regularly out in the real world, both from the club racing perspective, but also obviously the National Road Series, what this series takes its name from. The next round being Tour de Brisbane in the real world, so that's not too far away. I'm sure a lot of the riders here are using this virtual race right now, as a measure of things to come, see who's in good shape. Obviously, this 6 or 7 ahead, definitely ones to look out for once we get around to that. As we head back down a little descent here, see who's going to use that super tuck. Emily as well, using the super tuck. So definitely looking at saving her legs for that sprint, possibly. So let's see how we go here. Obviously, a couple more jumping in that super tuck. Very interesting.
The super tuck on this course is very risky as well, because I've seen riders dropped on that part of the course because they come out of the super tuck just a touch too late, and then it hits straight uphill again. And that's where I say it's dangerous, because if you don't come out in time, you actually don't pick up the power again. There's a little bit of a lag and you'll get dropped off a group. So all of these riders seem to know what they're doing, but this course is always a bit nerve-wracking getting into that super tuck. You've really got to make sure you come out early enough. I wonder if many of these teams will have a director sportif in their ear. We do see that a lot on Zwift racing now, who might just be telling them, what kind of tactics to play out here. There's, got 2 teammates there from the Knights racing, but other than that, it's sort of a lot of solo riders. So they're going to want to make sure that they get ahead of those pink jerseys as much as they can coming into the finish. This is a elite teams competition, so you need to know where your other teammates are, and every point counts. So what's good about the teams competition, even if you're in the chase pack, which we see is about 20 seconds back for a couple of them, Madigan and Sherwell, every point counts for your team. So that's what keeps the motivation high, and why we see those gaps really not blowing out as much as we might see in an individual race.
Yeah, it's interesting to touch on those 2 riders behind there sitting at 21 seconds. Madigan actually is sitting at the highest average watts for all the riders out there, 306 watts from Madigan. So obviously a very powerful rider. Sherwell is from Rock Salt, so she does have a teammate up ahead, so she actually does not need to do a single turn with Madigan right now. I don't personally see them coming back, but that is definitely some good points for Rock Salt there, trying to maybe mitigate that advantage that Knights Racing have over them with the 2 riders in this front group right now. So some very clever tactics being played there from Rock Salt as well. As we get to see those 2 riders behind right now.
Yeah, look at that from Madigan. Those are some serious numbers. She's been holding 5 watts a kg for a very long period of time now. You just wonder why so much. Obviously she's trying to catch up to those ahead of her. Not sure if that's going to be possible 17 seconds back, but man, she's going to need to have a good protein shake after this, because that is going to be some very, very fatigued legs after this race. And it must just be devastating having Sherwell really pulling through and doing no work. She doesn't need to. She's got teammates in the front pack, but she just gets a nice little free ride, pulls ahead of the group behind her, and cements herself in the team.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's definitely a great position for Rock Salt to be in here. Potentially they might get across. I mean, sitting on an awful lot of watts here, sitting at 300, 330. Wow, that's a very strong ride from her. See if she can make up any more ground here. It's still coming down 16 seconds. It's a one to watch here, that's for sure. From Madigan from Chaotic Energy Racing as well, a newer team out here for the NRS as well. So good to see her giving the sponsors a little bit of bit of showtime as well. Getting back up the front here as all riders back in the super tuck, going down to that last little ramp before we launch into the actual KOM.
Yeah, so this ramp that they're going to be hitting pretty soon, it's just going to really put the nail in the coffin for the legs because they know what's coming up. You can just see it sort of in the distance. They're going to hit this long kind of drag of a climb, and this is where I'd like to see some of those stronger climbers, maybe the Justine Barrows, the Emily Watts, sort of just pulling through and just putting a lot of suffering on those who aren't feeling so good, because this is the type of climb that you can do that, just that long drag, but it looks as though everyone's being a little bit cagey still. I think they know it's going to come down to the next climb. You'd be starting to get a little bit nervous, starting to think what your strategy is going to be, making sure you don't accidentally slip your finger onto that power up and drop it too early. But yeah, these guys hitting that 6% grade now. I'm a little bit worried about Banerjee there. I've seen her drop off the back twice now. So she's obviously saving energy. She just needs to be a bit careful she doesn't lose touch with that group in front of her. And
Yeah, exactly
Cassia
right.
Boglio,
I mean, it's. Sorry, Anna. It's yeah, very careful to not lose that wheel in front of you. It's very important. The second you blow, it's 5 meters we call it on Zwift. Once you're outside of 5 meters, you're a bit too far to get that draft effect. As we saw earlier, that Kona drafting, that ends from the rider in front about 5 meters. Once you're outside that, you're on your own. You don't have that group effect anymore, so you need to push even harder. But yeah, it's interesting that no one deciding to take the early gamble up this climb, unfortunately, but can't blame them. This KOM ahead is a nasty one. And third time up it definitely makes all the difference in the world.
yeah, I always think too, you're sitting here in commentary and, our heart rates are probably sitting around in the 50s and 60s. It's very easy to be like, you should just attack at this point. And then you look down and see, oh, well, they're still riding at 170. It's not easy to attack when you're that tired. But the great advice I've actually had from Katie Bates, who is the regular series, is attack when you're exhausted, because likely everyone else around you is exhausted too. A lot easier said than done, I'd have to say, having given it a try myself. But yeah, that's the time to do it. I'm not seeing a whole lot of weakness here. I think Banerjee sort of yo-yoing off the back is just her strategy to conserve energy and stay in the draft. That group behind now too, Madigan has broken away from Sherwell. She's now 14 seconds back to Sherwell's 22 seconds back. So she's obviously blowing up Sherwell behind her, and she's making an absolute concerted effort to get back in touch with this group.
Yeah, that's 100% right there. And I mean, she's obviously the stronger of the two, given that she's been sitting on 306 watts now. But I think she might not have that out and out top end needed to get back on terms up this actual KOM. Otherwise, we would have expected potentially to see her properly in this front group. But still, nonetheless, not to take away from the ride she is having, it's a very strong ride still to be 8th on the road right now. As we're descending into that causeway, about to meet the ramp, I would expect the fireworks to happen immediately. It is such a short KOM, just 2 minutes in effort. So I'd expect straight away the riders that we were seeing earlier, Cassia and Justine, to hit it here. As yes, we see Justine hitting 8 watts per kilogram already. It's definitely going to kick off immediately here.
Yeah, for sure. And we know Cassia Boglio, she's her and Emily Watts looking good for the sprint at the end. So they need to stay in touch. A feather being dropped already. Can't tell whether that's from Banerjee or her teammate, but that's not good. You don't want to be dropping that at this point in the climb. You want to be dropping it at the end where it really kicks up. Barrow there really pushing up ahead. She knows from the last time she's done this climb that she is the strongest by far. We've got Luxford staying right on her wheel. Luxford, if she's anything like her sister, is going to be one fierce competitor and will not want to get dropped off. Boglio, great for her, seeing her come up. And the one we need to watch out for, if she stays in touch, is Emily Watts. She is the sprinter of this group. And if she's managing to stay up there, then it's danger time for this group. We can see Justine Barrow potentially trying to get away solo, really pushing hard, and it looked like Schultz just a little bit too much there for her. Schultz is dropping off the pace. Banerjee just coming down a little bit, so I'm surprised there. She may have just been yo-yoing because she was that tired. But yeah, this is getting really mixed up here by Justine Barrow on the front.
Yeah, this looks to be like Justine's putting everything on the line here. This is the all or nothing move to crack away on your own, go solo, break from the pack. That if Cassia has anything to say about it, she's not going to let that happen, that's for sure. She'd do well here to work with those three that are with her, though, to bring this gap back, as there's only about 400 metres left of this climb, and if they just consolidate together, everybody knows how well Justine can climb. You may as well let her go, get an extra 3-4 seconds, and then just work together on the flat, use that pack dynamics.
Yeah, it's risky here for Justine. If this is her race winning move, then unfortunately, almost for her, she's got to keep up this power all the way over the top. But because she's got a little group behind her, which will have more of a speed advantage coming into the downhill, so she cannot lay off these watts at all. She's dropped a drafting power up, which isn't the best. You actually need to be in a draft for that one to be working well. So she might just be ditching that and picking up another one over the top. She's got 5 seconds. Let's see if she can keep up these watts over the top and on the downhill. She's just crested there. You can see just coming up 6 seconds with a group of 4 chasing. Looks as though Banerjee and Schultz have dropped off the pace, and that might just be what Madigan was after, just be able to catch up some of the stragglers who dropped on the climb. So smart racing from Madigan as well. But Justine Barrow, wow, she's definitely the queen of the mountain today.
Yeah, I think she must take my comments to heart early and wanted to prove a point. She's definitely still the strongest on the KOM, that's for sure. Let's see what she can do here. She doesn't have a bad time trial on her at all, but with Cassia in the group behind, obviously the winner from the time trial last week, you'd expect that group to have all the firepower in it. But I see that it looks like Katie actually did make that group. So it is a group of 5 chasing with 2 Love Me, Love You Knights Racing riders in there. Interesting though, I wonder if Katie is on the front or if it is Emily on the front and they're trying to save Emily's legs for the sprint or not. So we get Justine back on screen there just briefly.
Yeah, I think you can see Justine there. She does like riding that low RPM. I've seen she's sort of at the lower end, riding around that 65 to 70. And then we see Laura Luxford on the other end. She's usually been riding about 95 to 100. So 2 very different styles of races there. I would say Zwift racing kind of does err towards that lower cadence. You just crank out that power. But this is not so great for Justine Barrow, I've got to say. You can just see Emily Watts there being led in by Samara Shepherd in that chase group, 1.5 seconds back now. So Emily Watts, I mean, if she catches us up, she's my pick for the win, unless we see that sort of 1 kilometre to go attack, which is a course-winning move on this course. But Emily, by far, just has extreme 15-second power that I just don't see anyone else being able to beat at this point.
She's just there. They can just about reach out and touch her at this point, but it's those final meters that are the hardest to shut down, especially Ramon at 2% gradient. You do need to work that extra bit harder. The drafting effect still definitely an advantage. It doesn't stop really being an advantage until 3-4%, just like the real world, as they do make the catch here right now. So yeah, I think you're right in your call there. Emily's looking quite good, definitely getting broad across there. Some of the other teams as well, definitely helping do Knights Racing job for them. Obviously, it's a bit hard. You do want to win, and if you don't have any teammates up there, you ultimately do need to do some of the chasing as well. Just because one team has numbers doesn't mean they're going to do all the work. As we come into the sprint banner just here, it's the final chance for riders to get the power up they want if they don't currently have either a feather or the arrow power up. They'll be looking to get one, that's for sure. Let's see if anyone's trying to ditch any of their power-ups. Doesn't look like it. So I guess everybody's quite happy if they got with.
Yeah, I think this is it's an interesting course. You could have arrow or feather. I personally would almost say arrow. It could be controversial. I just think arrow, coming through into that last false flat, you can just catch a lot of people unawares with that. Obviously, if you've got a feather, likely you'll drop it on that sort of 10 to 14% kick right before the line. But in my opinion, a bit too early. I think the better sprints start off just when it sort of evens out and flattens off with about 200 meters to go. So I do still think arrow is the power up that wins the day. Interested to note now, though, as they approach the 1 kilometer go banner, if anyone will put in an early attack. Justine Barrow, huge effort on that last climb. I just wonder if she's burnt too many matches now. You can see the heart rate, though, about 150, so she seems to be sitting pretty comfortable here. But But yeah, again, eyes on Emily Watts. Someone has got to put in an early attack if they want to beat her.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Justine is in absolute terrific shape with how quick her heart rate has dropped down. She could be one to watch with her, potentially how quick she can recover right now. Although I guess everyone, again, will know her tactic of she'll be kicking on that ramp. And I imagine she, hopefully for her sake, has the featherweight power up. It is, as I mentioned earlier last night, it is such an interesting sprint though. All you need to do is follow that wheel across the top, easy said than done. And then you're given a ride to just drop that aero power up right as you need to and kick on for the sprint.
Yeah, they're just coming around a little sort of climb here. This is often where you'd see someone start to launch an attack. I'm not seeing anything. I'm just seeing actually Emily Watts, who we know is the sprinter, pushing ahead a little there. But yeah, it's again easy to say when you're sitting here pretty comfortable just talking about it. These riders will be shattered. It is such a hard course just doing one lap, doing three. I mean, with the ups and downs, do you ever see a bit of flat road on this course? It's absolutely brutal. We're seeing Justine Barrow just nudging a little bit, and I'm looking at numbers here from Cassia Boglio, hitting up to around the 5.5, and she's dropping an error. I think this is
that
that
an early
attack I
move?
talked about. I think, yep, she's pushing up to 7.9.
Yeah,
she has
here we
decided to go. I think this is a great time. 1K to go. She's going for that early attack. Love this. Justine Barrow trying to bridge the gap. Already over a second. She's got over 5 meters. Boglio, great move. Love this aggressive kind of riding.
Justine's scrambling to get back on terms there, but it seems Boglio has all the answers to it right now. Absolutely pouring the power on, dropping that arrow at just the right time as well. Let's see what she's got here. So we're getting her data on screen there, seeing at 300, no, 400 watts. Oh. Wow. She's got the ramp to use to her advantage as well here at 2.5 seconds. She could have this. We'll see what happens behind Emily's scrambling.
Look at that heart rate.
As well now with Justine.
Oh.
Wow, this is
195. I mean, she is absolutely at the limit. Look who's chasing her down. Emily Watts there. She is coming hard and fast. She knows if she's going to win, she has to sprint as soon as this road starts to flatten out, which is about now. So it looks as though Emily Watts is trying desperately to chase this down, but I think she's run out of energy. The course has just been too hard, and Cassia Boglio may end up taking this to the line. I'm not sure Justine Barrow is going to get onto her. She's pushed it up to 8.4 watts a kg. She's still got 2 seconds. I think Cassia may end up taking this. What a fantastic finish to this race. Justine Barrow still fighting hard.
What an unbelievable effort. Well, it's such a long drag here, but yeah, I think you're right. Boglio has this. Wow, what an unbelievable ride. What a tactic and card to have played, going so early, just like that. Unbelievable. If Justine coming in second as well, and Katie, actually, Emily's teammate, coming over the line in third. So third and fourth for Love Me, Love You Nights Racing, and Samara rounding out the top 5 there for us as well.
Oh, that was phenomenal. I love seeing that. A lot of times I see that tactic working on this course. There's that little lift up and you just manage to just almost catch your competitors unaware. She had the aero power up. She used it at a perfect time just to extend that gap and took that 2 seconds all the way to the line. No one could get near her within that last part. I think it showed you, one, that the race was just so hard and people were tired. Emily Watts got nullified. She wasn't able to use her big sprinting power because of that climb at the end. And yeah, wow, Cassia Boglio, that was phenomenal. What a great finish to that round 2 women's race.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable effort from there. And as you said, it's such a hard circuit. There's not a moment's rest out there. So it's easy, as you said, sitting in the commentary chair just to say, why don't you just follow a move? Why don't you just wait for the sprint? But obviously Cassia saved the cards just right, played that very smart move on that final lap just to sit in the group, not go all out with Justine up the KOM. And that might have been the very biggest difference maker she needed, just to keep enough in the legs for that little card to play in the last K there. Once you get that gap, as you said, though, going into that final, it is, I mean, it's hard to do, but that's a very smart tactic to play. And we knew and saw her in the first week's time trial that she has that level of power to be able to just pour the watts on and push away.
Yeah, and I'd have to say quite good sort of game tactics there. She obviously knows the game. She's seen this course. I think she's probably done her research knowing that that is a good place to go, especially with sprinters in your group. I love that style of racing, just more aggressive, positive racing, take it into your own hands, not sort of just waiting till the end and, hoping that you're going to get the sprint. I mean, she could have been caught and it could have been a wasted move, but yeah, no, she wasn't, and it all paid off in the end. So that was a great finish to that women's race. Just love what we saw there. We've got results coming up soon, so we'll just be able to see how things played out from a team perspective behind Cassia Boglio there. So she took that out 103.22, very close behind there in the end, less than 2 seconds with Justine Barrow. Katie Banerjee in third. So the looked like she'd fallen off on the climb, but managed to come in for a podium spot. Very impressive. Emily Watts, our sprinter of the group, in fourth. Samara Shepherd, the Kiwi, in fifth. Laura Luxford in sixth place. Paula Schultz in seventh. Maria Madigan, who probably had the biggest watt output for that whole race, coming in eighth. Courtney Sherwell in ninth. And Aline Smith in 10th. Looks like very good racing there from the Knights as well. A lot of Knights in the top 10. And Kierin, we've actually going straight down to the men, so we don't stop the action here. We're up to the men's race in this AusCycling Round 2 series, and starting off pretty hot and heavy already. So what do you know about some of the men racing today?
Yeah, so we got quite a few of our talented National Road Series men's teams out there with, I'd say maybe the favourite of the day. I'd back probably Sam Hill. I think he's in here racing for Nero Racing in that RCC, the grey jerseys floating around there. We've got B. Clark on screen here as well. Not a rider I'm terribly familiar with, I'm afraid, but yeah, I'd expect there are quite a few good riders out there. We got Cooper Sayers as well from Sam Hill's Nero Continental team as well. Potentially even Ollie Stenning from ARA. ARA have fielded such a large team in this. They could definitely play the numbers game as well. There's only 2 riders from Inform Make. However, they do have Mark O'Brien, one of the strongest Zwift racers out there. If anyone's familiar with the ZRL, I'm sure they're used to seeing Mark O'Brien pushing the pace for Aero Racing.
And it looks like we don't have our double first place getter, Ollie Jones, who was there in round 1, unfortunately. But the good thing about that is it does really open it up to a whole lot of other riders for today's race in round 2. I mean, I'm looking at Torben Partridge Madsen. He was 4th in the time trial last week and 3rd place in the scratch racing, so a bit of an all-rounder. Also looking at Sam Hill, as you mentioned, and Graham Frisley. So not a great result in the time trial. He was 33rd, but silver, so 2nd place in the scratch racing. As we're seeing Sam Hill pop up on screen, he looks too relaxed. He looks very, very chilled out there next to the window at a 2% grade. It's just looks like he's out for a Sunday stroll.
Yeah, he's definitely doing it quite easy right now, that's for sure. The heart rate at below 160, quite low for Zwift racing, that's for sure. But yeah, I'd expect to see maybe an early move from Sam. I mean, the times I've raced Sam, he definitely goes into the charge. Definitely very early, very aggressive rider, very exciting rider. But we could see here quite a few Oliver's Racing's riders in there as well. They've obviously fielded quite a large team to this. I know they have Liam White out there as well, who, again, another quite aggressive rider who does pack quite a hefty sprint as well. So one you probably don't want to bring to the line with you. So we're looking at Seb Barrett now from ARA Sunshine Racing. Yeah, quite a few very talented riders out here. It'd be hard to say who would really pick the difference, although Torben noted from that first week's performance, a 4th and a 3rd is a very well-rounded result, as we mentioned from the women's side with Katie. We've got 2 riders already moving quite early off the front here with Miles Stewart and Mark O'Brien, both from Nero Continental and Inform Make there.
Yeah, interesting time to attack on a bit of a downhill. They're maybe just positioning themselves well for the start of the climb because they don't want to be caught near the back, which is smart as well. Like we said, without Ollie racing, it does open it up for some of the other teams. We've got the Phoenix Cycling Collective currently sitting in second, Nero Continental in third, and Pro Cycling Sunshine Coast in fourth. So keep an eye out for those teams because without that sort of Ollie domination, they can move their teams forward a lot in the standings. So it'll be good to see how they go. As we're just seeing Mark O'Brien here from Inform. He's looking pretty good here in the pack, getting into the super tuck, moving forward quite well. It'll be a good position to start the climb. And yeah, they'll take this hard left. They've actually splintered the pack a little bit behind. So unfortunate for those riders back. It'll be very hard work getting back in touch on this uphill drag.
Yeah, we're going to see probably some early fireworks from riders who might not expect to make the final. Definitely early on with Bogner from Pro Sunshine Racing at 10 watts per kilogram already. That is a big throwdown early on. Let's see if he can create any separation from the pack here at the moment. He seems to have already got himself worked out. Maybe he's breaking that 5 meter barrier that you need to break to get out on your own. Looks like teams are trying the form together behind though to scramble back on with some of the Phoenix riders there, with Torben obviously being their main rider for that fourth and third last week. But yeah, we can look here now. Yeah, Phoenix looking like they're trying to form together. Definitely got the numbers game very early on here. Ben Clark, who we're looking at from VRM Racing as well.
Yeah, this is a great move from Bonya. That's pushed him really out the front. Just what I do find on this climb, though, is you can go a little bit too early. And then when it's settled down on this bit that they're riding through now, where it's just sort of flat, like I said, people will catch up. So sometimes going too hard too early on that first kick up, not such a great strategy as everyone sort of comes by and you've almost lost a little bit of momentum. And we're seeing him up there on screen, out of the saddle, low cadence and quite a relatively high heart rate. Not too high. It looks like he's putting in another little dig to just get away. Yeah, orange numbers. So he's not sure what the strategy is here because you've got, like we said, Torben Partridge Madsen sort of just in the second or third wheel. Not sure why you'd be pushing this hard lap one. It could really come back and hurt in a couple of laps' time.
Yeah, that's for sure. It definitely does pay quite a bit to go quite early on this this course, that's for sure. As we're seeing, yeah, Bogner's still pushing on here, although we do have Torben going early as well. We did see Torben last week in the ZRL pushing it out there for Arrow, though. So he's obviously a rider in form on Zwift right now as well. So he knows what he's doing. Obviously, he might just be feeling very good today and wants to thin this group out as many times as he can.
Yeah, he's actually a student in neuroscience, so he could also just be using this as a bit of a psych strategy to psych out his competitors around him. He obviously knows the head game pretty well, so yeah, you'd be a little bit worried with a student in neuroscience around you, that's for sure.
No, that's definitely a given. As we're looking here, as riders scramble to make this front group here, we'll wait to make the call of how many are up here just yet. I can see Mark O'Brien, Liam White, Cooper Sayers, obviously on Torben right now as well. Quite a lot of the riders you'd expect, but it includes Proctor as well up here. Yes, quite a lot of our good Zwift racers are already in the front group here. Definitely pays to have made that split early because then you can use that descent to recover. I know in the men's, it's quite an aggressive hill. You usually do it in sub 2 minutes. I myself, I love making the front group because it means I can actually get a rest down the hill. Otherwise, it's all power on all the way down, all the way into the next hill. But yeah, it's interesting to note the dual winner from last week, Ollie Jones, not fielding this week. I do know actually his team that he rides for in IRL Global 6. Obviously in this series he's racing for Vantage New Zealand, which fortunately enough AusCycling extended the invite to Vantage New Zealand to come participate in the NRS, as they've done a couple of times in the past. I had the pleasure of getting to race against a few of the excellent New Zealand teams. But yeah, Ollie Jones's IRL team is actually racing the Mount Ventoux Challenge. Quite a hard race. I know last year's winner was Naro Quintana. So right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, that is very strong. But like we'd talked about, it does open up some of the teams that were second, third, fourth from last week. So we've got the Phoenix Collective, who I believe are in those yellow jerseys. And just look how many they've got up the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think, riders in this front group. And they're sitting in second place. So this is extremely good for this team in round 2. I mean, if they can all stay in that front group, they could easily knock off, I think, what would be the New Zealand team, which I hate saying, being a Kiwi myself, but I think they're in a good position to do that.
Yeah, it looks like an early numbers game out here for Phoenix Racing, as well as Narrow Continental. They look like they got 3, maybe 4 riders up there, I think, by the looks of that. Oliver's as well, they've got themselves 3 riders up there, and I think there's only 1 New Zealander in here at the moment, which is a bit unfortunate for you, Anna, but I myself, I want to see one of the Aussie teams get back on track to being at least compete with the Kiwis, that's for sure. But yeah, we're going through that lull period here through Millionaires Row again. So it's interesting, as we can see here. It seems like it's quite a large group still, which I mean you'd expect in the men. There's quite a few punchier riders out here that suit this course. Seems like a group of roughly 18 in the front here. With the groups just being splintered out the back. So I wouldn't expect too many of the riders off the back to see this front group again at this point now.
Yeah, what I'm finding a little bit interesting is just how many riders that were in the standings doing very well on the top 5, not actually in this front group. So it looks as though we might not have a few of what I had considered the favourites coming in. I'm not really seeing Graham Frisley there or Seb Barrett, which means that they've really shaken things up. I mean, Seb Barrett was 3rd in the time trial in round 1 and 13th in the scratch, which is pretty decent. And like I said, Graham Frisley was 2nd in the scratch race. So this is really mixed things up a little with who's made this front group. And maybe it's just a course that hasn't suited what we saw in round 1, which is great. That's what you want to see in a national series. So good work, Kierin, on these course choices, because it's obviously mixed things up in this men's race in particular.
Thank you, Anna. I do like to create some evil racing, as I call it. I'm already getting messages from Carly right now complaining about the fact I made it 3 laps. So, but no, we can see Alex Bogner very motivated today, pushing a pace there. And yeah, at least some riders getting caught out. Seems one rider's off the back at the moment, actually trying his best to get back on terms. As we got Dylan McKenna pushing now from Narrow Continental on the front. Yeah, it's definitely one of those courses where there's not much respite. You can look to conserve where you can, and that is the name of the game. But unfortunately, there are many times where riders like Alex right now are going to go ahead and push the pace as immediately the second we go off the hill.
Yeah, I mean, do you, looking at what sort of eventuated with the women's racing, we sort of thought perhaps the sprinter would have made it away. But if this group stays together, the bad part, I guess, for people who are good at the hill climbing is that you've got the likes of Braden Clues-Proctor in there from Phoenix Cycling with 4 teammates who has some serious watts for 15 seconds, over 1,000. If they're saving their legs, they've got the teammates. That's not a great position for the other teams. I'm not seeing many 15-second watts above that. So I'd have to say Phoenix has put themselves in a great position. As we see Bogner again attacking off the front, I'm not sure if maybe his legs are just feeling really good and he's drifting to the front unintentionally, but not sure of the strategy here from Bogner on these little digs, because it's like we've seen, it's a real race of attrition, and every watt saved you're going to need at the end. So maybe don't put in too many more attacks on the front, because I think that's going to make the last lap very tricky, as we've seen just in the distance a few riders dropping off from this front group now. So that little climb up to the finish line just obviously was a little bit too much. It looks like about 3 riders just dropping off there. Still the Phoenix Collective, second in the team standings at the moment in the AusCycling Elite Teams competition that we're following in round 2 at the moment. My opinion, they've done pretty well as a team. They've got their sprinter hiding in there, and they're performing very well.
Yeah, I think you might be spot on there, Braden, being a very well-noted sprinter in his own right, racing with a few crits myself and live to regret it, that's for sure. Very, very powerful rider. Alex, again, hitting the front. He doesn't have any teammates up here, so I can't really comment on what that tactic is, personally. I could imagine Stu Shaw, the DS of ARA, might be in his ear, just telling him, make it hard, thin that bunch out, make it a tough race. He must be on a good day himself, potentially. But we can see back here, I would like to comment that Narrow have definitely got a numbers game as well to compete against Phoenix. I'd say Braden's nearest competitor would probably be Cooper, although it doesn't really show across on our data right now, but Cooper definitely has an incredible sprint on him. He did recently I believe he ran top 5 in a recent race in South Australia against pretty much our entire elite track squad, as they're in Olympic form, as we'd call it right now, looking to go and do their best against the Brits at the upcoming Olympics. And he managed to hold his own in a handicap with them. So I'd watch out for him. I think he's a rider in very good shape right now, that's for sure. If he can hold it over the front with the very strongest riders over that last lap, obviously that's the difference maker. If it comes down to a sprint, I'd personally probably throw my name behind him. That's probably going to be my earliest call.
Yeah, I'd say that NCR team, they're doing pretty well too. They've got 4, it looks like, in this top group against the Phoenix, who also looks like they might have 4. I think they've dropped a rider.
Oh, Marco going early here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, Mark O'Brien. I'm actually seeing coming through the socials that that's very well expected. Someone is saying you could probably make a drinking game using Mark O'Brien's attacks. So it must be a well-used strategy of his to attack off the front. And look who we're seeing chasing it down is Bonya. So, I mean, I want to see what Bonya's got at the end because, wow, he has been animating this race so far.
I'm sure Bong is kicking himself that he missed that little slip of an attack by Mark O'Brien there, but you're spot on by those social comments. I think anyone out there who's ever had to have the disfortunate chance of lacing up against Mark O'Brien, they know there's probably not too many moments in a race where he decides not to go on the attack. If there's a single moment of this race that goes to a lull, I'd expect Marco to be on the front and attacking. He's one of the well-noted riders. The commentator I'm actually replacing, Pat Shaw, coined a term of don't waste rubber, basically, pretty much is what he was known for saying. Don't go ahead and rock up to a race if you're not going to plan to do something. And I think Marco lives and breathes that quote in his way that he likes to do a bicycle race, that's for sure. But you can see here he's pushing out to an early gap here already at 5 seconds. He is a rider that can time trial, and I mean, he's probably going to immediately unclip from the trainer and jump on his road bike after this and probably go do 120 Ks down the hills of Melbourne somewhere. Well, in his 10 Ks hills of Melbourne. So you can see here using that super tuck here, but definitely has the numbers game behind him, although that would not concern Mark O'Brien one bit.
Yeah, I like this. I like people who give it a go. I love that little one-liner you mentioned there about the rubber. I mean, this team will come back. You can see Bonya pushing 12 watts a kg on the front. Absolutely sprinting, and will sprint over the top with a feather on a 2% grade. Bonya, I'd have to say, is the most confusing, aggressive rider I've seen. I'm not quite sure what the tactics are there, but I love commentating on it. It keeps it spicy. Just wondering if some of these Aussie riders have been inspired by your mate Richie Port's performance in the Criterion du Dauphiné overnight, where he's moved into the leader's jersey. So Australian rider doing very well on the world stage, and obviously inspiring some of these younger riders to just go give it a crack and, you know, push forward. We can see Bonya there in the picture-on-picture. Looks like quite a young rider, so maybe just thinks, what have I got to lose? Let's just push ahead, sprint over the top, do a little counter-attack, and has got 3 seconds.
Yeah, that's for sure. Definitely, he is one of our younger riders, one of our under-23 riders out there on ARA. Looks to be doing it pretty cool. Maybe he wants to become the next Mark O'Brien, loving to attack at any moment, any rest. If Marco's not off the front, maybe we're going to see Alex off the front instead. He doesn't look half bad here, just sitting nicely at that 360 watts. He's very, very collected there. He's not jumping all over the place whatsoever. This is very impressive, though. 191 BPM. Let's see how long he can sit at that. But props to him. He's living and breathing that don't waste rubber approach.
Yeah, he looks cool, calm and collected for 190 watts. I think I'd be on a puddle on the floor if I was pushing that kind of heart rate, and those watts are very high, edging up around the 6 watts a kg. So we'll see how long he can go. I'm loving it. It's going to be either a spectacular success or an epic crash off the back of this crew. But yeah, I like it. Why not? Pushing up out of the pedals now, up to about 3% grade, a little bit of a gap. I feel a touch sorry for him because I think that group behind is just letting him hang and use up almost all his energy as we see his cadence falling to about 70. So he's really cranking up now. But yeah, Alex Bonya, hats off to you. This is a great style of racing. It's aggressive and it's positive cycle racing. This is a lot better than just seeing, people sitting at the back of the pack conserving energy, although that might be considered a bit smarter.
We've got Marco crossing to him right now as we speak as well. I mean, one thing that Alex is doing for the race is forcing everyone to remain on the pedals, as we call it. More or less, that just means sitting probably for these guys around 300 to 330 watts just to make sure he doesn't get out too far. So it does create some, whilst it might burn his own chances, it does create a more selective group, that's for sure, and a very aggressive race. Definitely going to feel it after this one, that's for sure. You want to be in the ice bath up there at the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, definitely. Just seeing, looks like he's being caught up now. We've got Clues Proctor on the front with Clark. They've just headed down that sort of quite a steep downhill. They're hitting this climb before the climb where it's a bit more even, 4 to 5% grade, and then we'll see them hit the KOM for lap number 2. See if there's going to be any attacks off the front, try and splinter this pack a bit more. I do tend to think, just from the way it's looking, that some riders will be falling off the back. I'm already seeing some time gaps now with will probably be a chase pack coming into lap number 3. This group, they definitely need to start dropping these sprinters, because if they've been watching what happened in the women's race, you need to make sure you know who's around you, what kind of tactics are going to throw down. If you're good at climbing, you need to be starting to break up this race right now.
Yeah, that's for sure. As we got quite a few of those narrow continental riders in there, and all of them are very good rider and well adapted. Zwifter as well on top of that, with Dylan McKenna now pushing to the front. Cooper Say is sitting there. Got Sam Hill as well in there, a very, very strong rider out there who were featured in the ZRL as well. He himself in real life just moved recently across to narrow racing from Bridge Lane Racing as well. So a new transfer, however, he's not unfamiliar to that team. He did start his life out in the NRS at narrow as well. So it'd be interesting to note how they're going to ride this next hill now. I think this is the real different make a lap, would call it, to use that term earlier of don't waste rubber. Let's call it don't waste electricity, seeing as we are on Zwift right now. Let's see who decides to coin that and make the difference up this next hill. We're getting a live look here at Torben. He looks like he's in a bit of pain, but I could imagine that's why he likes it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a neuroscientist. He's a cyclist from Tasmania. Looking at his power profile, relatively even. That's probably why he performed well last time in round 1. He was 4th in the time trial and 3rd in the scratch race. So very even power profile there. Bit of an all-rounder. So one to watch for sure in the racing. I'm really loving how Phoenix Cycling Collective is doing this. They've got a good number of riders at the top who are sort of a bit varying. Good sprinters, good all-rounders. The climbers can help the sprinters. We're seeing Torben moving to the front now. He knows it's all about being in a good position leading into this next climb. He's in the super tuck. Perfect. I mean, he obviously knows how to ride Zwift for sure. He knows this course well. We're going to take this hard left-hander, and then let's see if there's any fireworks. If anyone wants to break this up as they head into lap number 3.
It seems this group is thinned down slightly as well already through that lap. So we're entering with, I think, only about 15 riders left up the front here as we ramp our way into this climb. Let's watch for those orange numbers. Orange are definitely its indicator on Zwift of the higher watts. Sam Hill, Alex Bogner yet again, kicking it off at the front, 11.4 watts per kilogram. Oh, you got to give you a tip the hat to him. He's definitely not going to waste any electricity today, that's for sure.
Oh, that's amazing. You just see that 5 second gap you're talking about with those riders a little bit behind, not getting much of a draft, although they are heading up at around 7%. So there wouldn't be a huge draft benefit anyway. A lot of feathers being dropped in this little chase group at the back, which, like I've said, it kind of shows they're struggling because the best time to drop it would be closer to the banner at the end. And it looks like instead of wanting to attack, they're just wanting to hold on till they get to the top. And Bonya, wow, is there anything this rider can't do? Because this is some serious hurt they're putting on themselves on the second climb that they're going
And
up.
just
And man,
just ready to take over from Alex is probably going to be Marco. By the looks of it, here going to go straight over the top of Alex with Torben reacting as well. Though Torben having to do it all on his own. He does have a few teammates behind, probably protecting Braden. I guess as you noted earlier, he's the sprinter of the team. But Marco looking pretty good here early on, as he usually does, that's for sure. He's probably already done 50Ks warm-up. Why not?
Yeah, it looks like the things are splitting up just a little bit. They're hitting up into the second part of the climb, goes up to about 6-7%, and you can just see the finish banner off in the distance for this climb. They'll be desperately wanting to get to there in this front group. Wow, that rider on the purple bike just absolutely dropped off the back there like a stone. So these guys are pushing so hard. O'Brien 7.4, Torben going through at 8.1. These guys are sprinting to the top.
Yeah, this is an unbelievable effort up this hill. They're definitely going to maybe even go sub 1 minute 50 up here, which would be punching close to the record on this hill. These are unbelievable efforts today, that's for sure. We got Sam Hill coming across the gap there, so narrow, well represented with 2 riders in there, 2 from Phoenix, 2 from Oliver's as well here. It's definitely going to be a cagey team game on this final lap as we start to head towards the line now that we've done that climb.
Yeah, the teams there that have definitely come out on top is that Phoenix Cycling Collective, who we have talked about before. They're sitting in second. And then that green team, which I can't see them in the top 10, actually. So not sure where they're sitting in the team standings. Nero Continental, who I think we had a rider or two, might have been dropped off, actually. So Phoenix really pushing themselves up the team standings from round 2. This is a great job from them.
Yeah, Anna, so just for reference, obviously you don't probably get too familiar with the NRS. We got the green team there is Oliver's Real Food Racing. They didn't actually field the team last round, so they're looking to get some points on the board today. 2 riders up here nice and early, that's good to see. There is 2 green teams almost in here. There's Inform Maker using that generic Zwift jersey, the green jersey there with Mark O'Brien obviously being from Inform Make. But yes, Oliver's Real Food Racing, definitely looking to get some points on the board here. We've got Liam White in there, definitely a one and very well noted Zwifter as it is, but definitely also known for his sprint, I'd say, in the real world from a select group, a group such as this. However, we do have Cooper Sayers in here as well as Braden as well. So there's some good sprinters left in this group. Definitely the climbers need to make some action happen over this final lap. But yeah, we got Liam having a teammate in Reese Robertson up here as well. Definitely helps his cause.
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate that I'm just seeing one of the national New Zealand riders up there with the Silver Fern jersey. I think they're surrounded by a lot of Aussie teams, so they've probably going to move down a little bit on the standings without their main man, Ollie, coming into the race for round 2. But this is O'Brien again on the front. He loved it. He did this in the second lap too, just really pushing up these what I call false flats, pushing ahead. Bonya right behind in the orange numbers, going to get right on his wheel. Won't let him get away this time. If those two could actually work together, they could potentially move away from this group behind, catch them a little bit unawares. They're obviously really motivated. Be good to see those two try and get away in a little 1-2 break themselves. Different teams though, so I doubt they'll want to work together, but that may be their only chance to actually split away.
Yeah, you're spot on there. They're obviously probably maybe they're the strongest riders in the field. Hard to tell. There's probably some KG riders trying to save their legs for the final, but they're 2 most motivated riders, you'd call them, that's for sure. If they could get together off the front, they could become impromptu teammates potentially for the final lap and, ride together to get to that final cut before deciding to fight it out between each other. But it's easier said than done on Zwift. Obviously, there's no communication between each other unless you have something prepared, like a Discord channel or something like that. So I could imagine here as we come to the final lap with Phoenix having 3 riders in the front here. They're definitely sitting in the numbers game position. They would I'm sure the bigger teams would be telling them, all right, you've got the numbers up here. You've clearly got the legs today. Get on the front. Time to make the difference. But if Alex or Marco have anything to say about that, they'll be the ones pushing off the front to force the others to chase. That's for sure. Just touching on that Kiwi rider there is Tom Stephenson. Not a rider I'm terribly familiar with, I'm afraid, but he's quite new to Zwift, I can see, or at least new to the racing side of Zwift. He's only done 3 races in the past.
Oh, wow.
So definitely one that, you'd be interested to know what he's capable of. Imagine a lot of these riders don't actually know who he is, so he could fly under the radar and use that to his advantage.
Yeah, junior rider too. So obviously the youngest rider in this front pack. Not sure what junior entails. I would imagine sort of an under 20 type rider against some seniors and under 23s. But yeah, Tom Stevenson, good job. Obviously embracing the esport format, racing against a whole bunch of Aussies. He doesn't have many teammates around him, a little bit isolated, but doing pretty well for a junior rider. So good job, Tom Stevenson.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's good to touch on earlier how he noted that sometimes New Zealand get to send teams across to race in some of our series. Obviously, one of the biggest noted races we all do together is the Oceania titles. So typically that's how riders get to know the Kiwi contingent, is they come across, or we go over to New Zealand and race some of the bigger races over there. I know the Southland Tour, that's one of the ones I have the joys of doing. It's terrible, cold, windy race, that one. Yep. Definitely a chance here for him to show himself against the stronger teams in Australia. And if he isn't already signed, maybe it's a chance for him to get signed either by one of the continental squads across there in New Zealand, noting that New Zealand have 2 incredibly strong teams right now. But it's definitely a nice chance for potentially an unknown rider to make a bit of a name for himself, see what he's got, see what he can stack up against these stronger riders. As we get up this into the false flat here, I'm waiting for Alex or Mark to hit the front and make the crack. And here we go. Here comes Mark O'Brien.
There's Mark.
On cue, what would you expect? Here he comes. And Alex responding as well, straight off the bat.
Fantastic. They're really lighting it up. We've got Torben there as well, hitting those orange numbers at 8.3 watts a kg. But yeah, the point you're making, Kierin, is quite a good one. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that the Zwift Academy seems to have a lot of Kiwi and Aussie riders doing so well, both across the men's and women's. And I think what this esport is opening up is a whole lot of opportunity for riders on the other side of the world, to the big European sort of teams, to actually showcase what they can do to a much bigger audience. So it is different to in real life cycling, obviously, but there is some big talent down under that this kind of a platform is shining a light on. So it's fantastic seeing young riders, under 23s, the juniors, coming forward and embracing this discipline of the sport, I'll call it, so that they can actually have some professional opportunities. That it is tricky to kind of go and get those when you're in Australia and New Zealand and head over to Europe and get noticed. So good job, the riders who are doing that. I think it will make quite a difference to their cycling career.
Yeah, it's good to touch on Zwift Academy, actually, especially now that we're focusing on the men's race here. Last year's winner was Jay Vine, who he rides for the Narrow Continental team, the team there in the grey jerseys. Well, last year he rode for the Narrow Continental team, we should say. So he took the series out. He rode very dominantly. We're watching here as Mark O'Brien still pushing on with Alex scrambling onto the wheel there. But yeah, back to Jay Vine there. He took the series out, proceeded to then post some very impressive results in the Zwift Academy. Impressed enough, so much so that he took out Zwift Academy, and the result of that is a contract. So there is a women's version and a men's version. The women's side, you get a contract with Canyon SRAM Racing, which last year was Neve Bradbury, took that out from Australia as well. And on the men's side was obviously Jay Vine. And Jay himself this year has already shown himself once in the Tour of Turkey, taking the top 3 on GC there, noting himself immediately on the scene, basically. Yeah. Fortunately, he's recently had a little tumble, so he's just on the mend at the moment, but I'd expect to see him back in contention in the later half of the year. But it's good to note that he did cut his teeth out here on Zwift. Obviously, he matched it up with IRL racing to show just how strong he really is. But yeah, it's curious to see potentially maybe we have another Jay Vine sitting in the mix here. As you said, there's usually the winner tends to be from Australia or New Zealand. I know the winner just prior to Jay that took out the contract back when it was NTT Quebecer was another Kiwi as well, and he actually just got renewed. He just got renewed with NTT as well, so it's definitely an interesting one to see who potentially could take it out. It was Drew Christensen, sorry, was his name. So yeah, you definitely are looking at potentially a future batch, that's for sure. I mean, it was noted, I think, by you, and I think you commented on Sam Hill in the ZRL, just how strong he is at the moment. And with the ZA being open now to all ages, you could expect to potentially see him giving it a crack and seeing if he could get that Alpecin Fenix contract. As we're watching these two riders continue to push on, they've really opened that gap up now. They seem to not be letting up. They've been sitting at 6 to 7 watts per kilogram the whole time up that false flat. They've opened up already to above 15-second gap to the riders behind. Let's see if they can continue to crack on there, Anna.
Yeah, I feel like they might have been listening to us saying that if they wanted to make a break, they've got to work together. And I'm just seeing them switch up leads here as they lap a rider. So obviously this has been a very fast couple of laps. They've headed into lap 3. They're just coming down this climb, then they'll go up another one, and then they'll be hitting those KOMs again. But yeah, 18, 19 seconds now. I mean, we did call it if they could work together and take some turns. These two have been the ones animating it over the first 2 laps. And I think this is the magic sauce. They just needed to realize it was the two of them, get on each other's wheels and start taking some turns. Now, if they have the wherewithal, they could actually be private messaging each other while they're racing to just maybe get a little bit of a sort of a turn system happening. Because what they're doing now is working. We're just seeing the stats of Sam Hill as he sits in the Super Tuck coming behind this group. I mean, it looks like about 8 to 10 riders there. They're not going to have a huge bunch dynamic with these two, O'Brien, really just pushing pace. So I think they need to worry. This could be a bit of danger. These two at the front, O'Brien, he's got good legs. He is attacked and attacked and attacked.
Yeah, you're spot on there, and I think it's all on the group behind to get themselves organised right now, because these two off the front, this is how they're going to win this race today. If they're not off the front together, they're probably going to just be getting top 5, maybe a top 10. So it's realistically, it's already out to 20 seconds we're hearing. That's already unreal. It's going to be a bit of a mammoth task to pencil these two riders back, being so motivated. And you can see there, they've got this nailed of how to swap off here. They're actually taking proper turns with each other. So we can see here they're going to be working together there. Those impromptu teammates till maybe that final K at this point. But it's really back here watching that second group there. It's really the numbers game is with Narrow and Phoenix. So if they're not really taking up the charge, well, I don't really see how they're going to get it back. It seems though that Sam Hill's the one that is sitting on the wheel. So I'm guessing he is their marked rider. He might be the one who's saving it for that final KOM and preparing to launch an attack across, as Cooper and Dylan McKenna are pulling the turns at the moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they've got less than 10K to go now. You can see at the speeds at the bottom that Alex and Mark are riding at 47, 48K an hour with, we're following Cooper Says there in the chase pack, 44. So they're pushing bigger watts and bigger speed. I mean, we know what that equals. It's you don't have to be a mathematician to know that you're riding faster on the road. You're going to be extending that gap. 24 seconds now we're hearing. I mean, this is really almost has caught that chase pack unawares. I mean, they must have seen these two had good legs because they've been attacking just constantly throughout this entire race. And now they've just seemed to have let them go. There's a bit too much hanging back here and trusting they'll pull them back in. But I don't think that's a surety. That gap is getting way too big for my comfort level anyway.
Yeah, and you touched on it there. We can see the two speed differences there at the moment. Obviously, the chase group's going uphill. However, I noted that our leaders were sitting on above 40 going up this little rise. And the chase group sitting only at 36. This is definitely maybe a move here that could stick. I mean, it's like I said, it's all on this chase group how they want to get it together, whether they can start etching into this lead. However, it sounds like they're not doing it. They're out to 26 seconds already. And it's only potentially going to get worse as we start to not have to go through as many descents anymore. So definitely it's going to be in favour of the leaders. The more that the road goes uphill, the more that gap I would expect will continue to stretch.
Yeah, these guys are riding. I like the strategy. I like how they're riding. They've pulled away instead of just relied on the fact that the pack will assume they can bring them back. The pack we can see on that left-hand side has just come down the part that will give them the advantage, which is that super tucking group dynamic. You can see Phoenix Cycling Collective in the yellow really pushing pace now. I think they've just realized we've really got to catch these guys. We've seen them on the climbs. On laps 1 and 2, and they've been by far some of the strongest. So there's definitely more motivation coming from that chase pack. We're seeing very high speeds there, 62k an hour versus on the right-hand side, the two leaders at 32k an hour with Mark O'Brien really just animating this race. And we're up to 22 seconds. I do think now seeing those yellow jerseys at the front, we know that they've got a good sprinter in the midst of that chase pack. I think that motivation's gone up, and I think that 22 seconds could quite quickly come down to 10 before they start that KOM.
Yeah, I'd hazard a guess they'd probably really want 20 seconds at least at the top of this hill here, because that does, as you mentioned, the pack dynamic going down the hill, being able to super tuck all together, going over the top of each other, just constantly increasing that pace. That tends to wipe out any advantage you have very quickly. But I'd say if they got 20 seconds as we start to enter this descent here, I think they're at least going to start that hill with at least 10 seconds. And they're the two riders who have been having the absolute crack up the actual hill. So let's see here. I don't know, this is going to be close to call, but if the narrow riders and the Phoenix riders do start to get together, although there are losing riders out of this chase group, actually, I've just noticed that. There's riders seem to be, there's one rider coming back on here now, but that's not looking too good for this chase group. That looks like it is night and day. There's Sam Hill almost losing contact there, only just coming back onto the wheel now with another Oliver's rider as well, just coming back onto the wheel. It's not looking too good for this chase group right at this minute. I'd be panic stations if I was someone's DS, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's moved up to 28 seconds now. So like I said, I think it had to get down to about 10, and it's even just extended. And looking at Alex Bonnier and Mark O'Brien, we know that they rode this hill so well in laps 1 and 2. Seeing them come into it on this third lap, I mean, I don't see them really exploding here unless, maybe we're underestimating their riding. But I think they're going to come in really strong because they've got such a gap. You'd be so motivated by this confident kind of riding. And if they extend that out even further, I mean, who cares about the sprinters behind them? They can just play cat and mouse amongst themselves. As long as they don't start doing what you see in real life racing is, pitching up a little bit too early and just playing cat and mouse leading into the end. That's the only chance I think we'll see of some of this chase pack on the left-hand side of the screen catching up to them. But over 30 seconds now. So, wow. Alex Bonnier, Mark O'Brien, amazing racing.
Yeah, and both riders as well, as we might start to presume they might be the ones that go to the line. Both riders not noted with a sprint whatsoever. Marco is very well noted, at least locally down here in Melbourne, as a rider you do want to take to the line with you, that's for sure, because you might just about have him. And I'm pretty sure Alex is a not too dissimilar rider, noted time trialist more or less. So I think he himself probably doesn't pack the biggest sprint, so both riders probably have the very similar tactic to each other right now. Work together and then drop the other. That's probably about it. We can see here, though, that sitting on 7 watts per kilogram up here, they are working so hard behind to pour it in on this hill. I mean, this is their last chance to make any difference back up. You need to commit all together on this hill. You can't leave anything out there. If you don't have them back to, I'd say, maybe 15, maybe 10 seconds by the top of this hill, it's game over.
Yeah, look at that. It's been cut down from 28 seconds down to 19 now, but I still don't think, even with Torben Partridge, who we know is a good racer from round 1, pushing very high here. You can almost feel the desperation of Torben. You can just see it there and picture out of the saddle. I mean, there's crazy amounts of sweat there, just pushing so hard, high heart rate, really just trying to catch up to these two. But 19 seconds, oh, I just don't think it's going to happen. You can see the top of that K-wave just there in the distance. They'll hit it downhill. The risk, too, of this chase group is that if they don't sort of stick together, they'll lose that advantage of the downhill. But even if they had that, 20 seconds, just believe is too much. I mean, this is amazing. Not only are we treated to a great women's race on this course, this has been a great tactic in the men's race. And you can always just feel it's that in real life cycling tactics that are crossing over into the esport format, which is awesome to see. I just think this is fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely a blend of IRL tactics here, that's for sure. Moving early, not waiting for when it's expected to attack. That's, my old coach when I was racing used to tell me to do the exact same. Don't wait for when it's expected. Just have a crack off the front, So it's, very nice to see Alex and Mark made it work. They've made it stick, it seems, with already, it looks like 19 seconds across the top. I don't see how this comes back with less than 5K left to race. It's only a question here of who's going to outdo who in the final, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm seeing some funny comments coming in here from the YouTube channel saying that poor O'Brien, Mark Keenan once said that O'Brien goes slower when he stands up for the sprint. So not sure how that's going to play out for him up against Alex Bonya. Looks like we've got sort of 2 20-minute power riders who'll be having a sprint off together. And that kind of lends itself to maybe that 1 kilometre long range attack like we saw in the women's race play out. I think if these two aren't sprinters, that could be a little bit of a better strategy than trying to sort of do something that maybe isn't in your little toolkit.
Yeah, as we're seeing the chase group here trying to formulate themselves together the best they can, but they've already rounded that corner up to head towards Millionaires Row. That's night and day to the chase group here. I mean, it's not all said and done. It's, these riders, they might start foxing ahead. They might start looking at each other. It doesn't look like that's happening at all, though, as Alex is pushing out almost 600 watts just to hold Mark's wheel. They're absolutely giving it everything right now. But it's good to see back there. I can see the Kiwi rider's still in there. That's the young Tom Stephenson as well. So he's had an unbelievable ride just to make that select group there. That's, chapeau to him, tip of the cap. That's a very impressive ride.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'll always have a little soft spot for the Kiwis out there trying to mix it up with the Aussies. And, you see the Soul Silver Fern in that chase pack. And, I hope he can take it to him a little and have a little bit of Kiwi luck at the end and outsprint them. But I do know that Phoenix Cycling Collective seems very strong. And I would imagine seeing a yellow jersey take it out from that chase pack. But looking here at Alex Bonya, they are coming through with about 3 kilometres to go. I don't think that looks like an attack yet. They're still working well together, pushing some very high numbers in his heart rate. Every time I see it, it's up around that high 180s. I mean, wow, that's phenomenal. Under the banner there, they will have picked up a power up, and I think once they know what their power up is, that will inform what kind of strategy they will attempt. I think, like we saw in the women's race, perhaps the aero power up is good for that long range attack. Just sort of get a little gap, drop the power up. This is that little climb where we might start to see a little bit of action happening on the leaders on the right-hand side of the screen.
Yeah, let's see if anyone was watching the women's race out there and saw what Cassia managed to do and wants to recreate that. Maybe Bogner, being a teammate of hers, maybe he has her in his ear and might have a little bit insider trading on what could work out here today. So give Mark the slip on the last kilometre. That could work a treat for him. We did see earlier here, we managed to put out a notice on one of the climbs. It looked like he had a 12.5 watts per kilogram kick. So he might not be the biggest kick in the world out of the riders in here. We're talking about some riders in here who can do 18, 19 watts per kilogram. But it might be enough to give Mark the slip, as it looks like these two ahead have 30 seconds on that chase group ahead. So I can imagine we'll start to see a few little cat and mouse games come into play, that's for sure. You can see down the bottom again.
Some good
Yeah, we can see
ride-ons,
at the
right,
bottom, the
Kierin? We can
ride-ons
see.
absolutely pouring in. Yeah, that's for sure. Mark's sitting at 14 ride-ons for him. I wonder if he's leading the ride-on cup at the moment. He's definitely a crowd favourite for those Melbourne folks down here. Everyone loves seeing a Mark performance at usually it's at our national championships. He's usually going on the charge very early, and everyone, if you give a ride-on in IRL, they'd be pouring the ride-ons for him in our national championship. That's for sure.
And they've started riding a little bit cagey now. We can just see O'Brien sitting on the wheel of Alex Bonnier. I think he might be using a little bit of the age factor, hoping the young one maybe just sticks and gives him a bit of a draft. Looking now at Mark O'Brien moving to the front. Still doesn't look like an attack. They're hitting this tight right-hander, which will they've still got. Looks like they're just coming under the 1 kilometre to go. Oh, it's nervous watching this kind of racing because you know someone's going to have to go. You're not going to want to take two to the line, but who's going to go first? What's your pick, Kierin? Who's going to start this attack going?
I'm going to have to back, I think, Mark, although 150 heart rate for Mark is actually very high. He's very well noted to have an exceptionally low heart rate. But yeah, I don't know. Alex looked quite good with his kick earlier on, but I'm sentimental. I'm going to pick him up, that's for sure.
That looks like they're just coming into that right-hander. It's going to kick up really strong. They are going to take it to a sprint to the line. Apparently the socials are saying neither of them are sprinters, but they've decided to have that out in that kind of a format at the end. Maybe they've both got arrows. I'm not seeing any feathers drop on this, so that's the assumption I'm making. And we can see Bonnier here just moving to the front on that yellow Tron bike with O'Brien probably in the better position, just sitting right on his draft. He can just attack when he sees Alex attack. So, yeah, you can see the finish line right at the end. They've got 370 meters to go. I'm not seeing anyone open up. And there we see it. We've got Bonnier. He has got the aero
Alex
power up. O'Brien's got the feather. Oh, orange numbers coming through. Bonnier's got to push it up. He might have just left that sprint a little bit too late, as we see. Is it O'Brien just changed? Oh, Bonnier has come through with 12.3 watts a kg. That was amazing. Phenomenal from Alex Bonnier there.
What a kick there from Alex. That is unreal. As we flick back here to the chase group now, let's see. It looks like Sam Hill already jaunted off the front a bit early. Is he going to hold on to it? No, here comes Braden rounding him up already. Oh, wow. Wow, that's an absolute unbelievable kick. It was Torben actually with the kick. Cooper following through on his wheel. It seems, yes, it's Torben taking the last podium spot there, with Cooper making up in fourth place by the looks of it. We'll have to wait to see the final results for the remaining riders. But yeah, what an unbelievable ride by Alex. A young rider, I believe, he's an under-23 rider, but an exceptional ride to take it to a seasoned whirly veteran, as Mark O'Brien is noted to be, and ride a very similar style to him. It's it's very impressive. It's great. It's great to see, and you love to see that kind of aggressive racing out here on Zwift. As we get a look here at the results, Anna, would you like to take us through them?
Yeah, that's Alex Bonnier. Look at those watts per kg average for the whole race. It is absolutely phenomenal. Just ahead, just over a second from Mark O'Brien from Inform Racing. Torben Partridge Madsen, who we talked about a bit during the race, rounded out the podium in third. Cooper Says in fourth. Braden Clues-Proctor in fifth. Sam Hill in sixth. Tom Stevenson, the Kiwi, only Kiwi in that bunch of Aussies, in seventh. Liam White in eighth. Tristan Dimmock in ninth. And Dylan McKenna, about a minute back there, it looks like, in 10th.
Yeah, very good riding there by that young Kiwi in seventh place. He's definitely put himself as a noted rider, making up the difference in Ollie's absence. So maybe a young Ollie Jones out there potentially call it early. But yes, what an absolute ride from Alex and Mark to make it off the front there.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, it's my first time commentating some Australian racing. I usually commentate the Zwift Race League, which is worldwide. And I've got to say, this was super exciting. I think it definitely showed the in real life races coming across to esport. They brought some of those tactics. We saw early breakaway in the women's race, which we don't often see. We saw those two strong riders, O'Brien and Bonnier, in that men's race just take it to them in lap 3. I mean, their breakaway was so far out, about 11k till the finish. They broke away, almost unheard of in Zwift racing. So phenomenal to see. I love what these in real life races have brought to the Zwift game. And yeah, that was super fun to commentate. I don't know about you, Kierin, but yeah, I think it really lit things up and made that some racing that was unexpected.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the aggressive racing, that's for sure. I would love to see any breakaway win a bike race. That's how I used to win my races. So I love to see someone go off the front. But it's good to know those results just now getting on screen. Make sure you follow across on our socials and also AusCycling socials for the final results, as they're preliminary at this stage. They'll be doing their checks. They do a weigh-in, just for anyone out there wondering what kind of verification processes go in place with AusCycling behind this. So yeah, just keep an eye on socials. Us ourselves, Zwift, Oz, and Zed will be sharing them, as well as AusCycling. But what a great day's racing, that's for sure. I can't wait for next week. In 2 weeks' time, the 20th of June, same time, same place. Across on London, though, the Triple Loops course.
Yeah.
A very interesting loop, that one.
Yeah, I just saw that when I was having a loop at what was up next. Triple Loops is going to be a hard one. I think, again, Kierin, you've outdone yourself with course selections. We had round one, some short time trials, some crit racing. Today, a total race of attrition where we saw great breakaways. 2 weeks' time, London. Yeah, Triple Loops. I mean, that's going to throw things up in the air again. So it's wide open, really. There's going to be a big shake around with teams. Check out Zwift Power for all the team standings to see where these elite teams are standing in this AusCycling Elite Team National Series. But yeah, that's, I would say, some of the most exciting racing I've seen on Zwift, and super excited to see what comes around in round 3.
Thanks for joining me in the booth, Anna. It was always a joy calling it with you today. It was great seeing that aggressive racing style out there. Looking forward to hearing you in the booth for the ZRL coming up with the next finals, I believe, coming up quite soon.
Yep, playoffs tomorrow in ZRL. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time for the round number 3, and hope those riders get a bit of recovery now. That was brutal racing. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. It's been a blast. We'll see you next time.